It don't seem to comfort me, but I expect it older, said Aunt Chloe. But don't no use talking. I will just wet up their crumb cake and get you one good breakfast, 'cause nobody knows when you will get another. In order to appreciate the suffering of the Negro's South, it must be remembered that all the instinctive affections of that race are peculiarly strong. Their local attachments are very abiding. They are not naturally daring and enterprising, but home-loving and affectionate. Add to this all the terrors with which ignorance invests the unknown, and add to this again that selling to the South is set before the Negro come from childhood as the last severity of punishment. The threat that terrifies more than whipping or torture of any kind of is the threat of being sent down river. We have ourselves heard this feeling impressed by them, and seized the affective horror with which they will sit in their gossiping hours and tell frightful story of that down river, which to them is that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns. A missionary among the fugitives in Canada told us that many of the fugitives confessed themselves to have escaped from comparative kind masters, and that were induced to brave the perils of escape in almost every case. But the desperate horror with which they regard being sold south, a doom which was hanging either over themselves or their husbands, their wives, or children. This nerves the Africans. This nerves the Africans. Naturally patient, timid, and unenterprising, with heroic courage, and leads him to suffer hunger, cold, pains, the perils of the wilderness, and the more dread penalties of recapture. The simple morning meal now smoked on the table, for Mrs. Shibley had excused Aunt Chloe had excused Aunt Chloe's attendance at the great house that morning. The poor soul had expended all her little energies on this farewell feast, had killed and dressed her choicest chicken, and prepared her corn cake with scrupulous exactness, just to her husband's taste, and brought out certain mysterious jars on the mantelpiece, some preserve that will never produce except on extreme occasions. Lord Pitt, said Moose triumphantly, "Han't we got ambassador of a breakfast?" at the same time catching a fragment of the chicken. Aunt Chloe gave him a thunder box on the ear. "There now, crying over the last breakfast your poor daddy squirmed to have to home." "Oh, Chloe," said Tam, gently. "Well, I can't help it," said Aunt Chloe, hiding her face in her apron. "I'm so tossed about. It makes me act ugly." The boys stood quite still, looking first at their father and then at their mother, while the baby climbed out her clothes, began an imperious, commanding cry. "There," said Aunt Chloe, wiping her eyes and taking up the baby. "Now I'm done, I hope. Now do eat something. This year my nicest chicken. There, boy, you shall have some. Poor creatures, your mommy's being close to you. The boys need no second invitation, and went in with great zeal for the tables. And it was well they did so, as otherwise there would have been very little performed to any purpose by the party. Now, said Aunt Chloe, bustling about after breakfast, I must put up ear clothes, just like as not. He will take them all away. I know there is. Miss Ostert. There is. Well, now, your flannels for roundties is in the corner, so be careful, 'cause there will nobody make you no more than hear your old shirt. And this year is new ones. I thought of this your stocking last night, and put a ball in to mend with, but Lord, who's ever meant for you? And Aunt Chloe, again overcome, laid her head on the box side, and sobbed. To think on it, no creature to do for you, sick or well. I don't really think I ought to be good now. The boys, having eaten everything there was on the breakfast table, began now to take some thought of the case, and seeing their mother crying, and their father looking very sad, began to whimper and put their hands to their eyes. Uncle Tom had the baby on his knee, and was letting her enjoy herself to utmost extent, scratching his face and pulling his hair, and occasionally breaking out into clamorous explosion of delight, evidently arising out her own internal reflections. "Ah, crawl away, poor creatures," said Aunt Chloe. "You will have to come to it too. You will live to see your husband sold, or maybe be sold yourself, and raise your boys. There's to be sold, I suppose, too, just like as not, when they gets good for something, and no use for niggers having nothing." Here one of the boys called out, "There's Missy coming in. She can do no good." "What is coming for?" said Aunt Chloe. Mrs. Shebbelik entered, and Chloe set a chair for her in a manner decided, grave and crusty. He did not seem to notice either the action or the manner. She looked pale and anxious. "Tom," she said, "I'm come to," and stopping suddenly, and regarding the silent group, he sat down in a chair, and covering her face with her handkerchief, began to sob. "Lord, now, Mrs. Don't, said Aunt Chloe, bursting out in her turn. And for a few moments they all wept in company, and in those tears they all shed together. The high and the lowly melt away all the heart burning and anger of the oppressed. Oh, you who visit the distressed, do you know that everything your money can buy, given with a cold, averted face, is not worth one honest tear shed in real sympathy? My good fellow, says Mrs. Shibley, I can't give you anything to do you any good. If I give you money, it will only be taken from you. But I tell you solemnly, and before God, that I will keep trace of you, and bring you back as soon as possible. I can command the money, and tell them, trust in God. Here's the boys called out that Mrs. Haley was coming, and then an unceremoniously pushed open the door. Haley stood there in very ill humor, having ridden hard the night before, and being not at all pacified by his ill success in recapturing his prey. Come, said he, "You nigger! You are ready?" "Servant, ma'am," said he, taking off his hat as he saw Mrs. Shibley. And Crowley shouted and called the box, and getting up, looked gravely on the trader. The tears seeing suddenly turned to sparks of fire. Tom rose up meekly to follow his new master, and raised up his heavy box on his shoulder. His wife took the baby in her arms to go with him to the wagon, and the children, still crying, trailed on behind. Mrs. Shibley, walking up to the trader, detained him for a few moments, talking with him in an earnest manner, and while she was thus talking, the whole family party proceeded to a wagon that stood ready harnessed at the door. The crowd of all the old and young hands on the place stood gathered around it to bid farewell to their old associates. Tom had been looked up to, both as a head servant and a Christian teacher, by all the place, and there was much honest sympathy and grief about him, particularly among the women. "Why, Chloe, your bar is better with you," said one of the women, who had been weeping freely. Notice the gloomy calmness with which Aunt Chloe stood by the wagon. "I've done my tears. I've done my tears," she said, looking grimly at the trader, who was coming up. I does not feel my cry for that yard old limb. "No harm. Get in," said Harry to Tom, as he trotted through the crowd of the servants, who looked at him with lowering brows. Tom got in, and Harry, drawing out from under the wagon seat a heavy pair of shackles, made them fast around each ankle. A smothered groan of indignation ran through the whole circle, and Mrs. Shibley spoke from the den. "Mr. Harry, I assure you that precaution is entirely unnecessary." "Don't know, ma'am. I've lost $1,500 from this year place, and I can't afford to run no more risks. What else could she expect on him?" said Aunt Chloe, indignantly, while the two boys, who now seemed to comprehend at once their father's destiny, clung to her gown, sobbing and groaning vehemently. "I'm sorry," said Tom, "that Master George happened to be away. Jude had gone to spend 2 or 3 days with a company on the neighboring estate, and having departed early in the morning, before Tom's misfortune had been made public, had left without hearing of it. Give my love to Mrs. George," he said earnestly. Harry whipped up the horse, and with a steady, mournful look, fixed to the last on the old place. Tom is wheeled away. Mr. Shibley at this time was not at home. He had sought Tom under a spur of driving necessity to get out the power of the man whom he dreaded, and his first feeling, after the consummation of the bargain, had been let off the leaf. But his wife's expostulation awoke his half-slumbering regrets, and Tom's manly disinterestedness increased the unpleasantness of his feeling. It was in vain that he said to himself that he had right to do it, that everybody did it, and that some did it without even the excuse of necessity. He could not satisfy his own feeling, and that he might not witness the unpleasant scenes of the consummation, he had gone on a short business tour up the country, hoping that all would be over before he returned. Tom and Harry rattled on along the dusty road, wearing whirring past every old family familiar spot until the bounds of the estate were fairly passed, and they found themselves out on the open pike. After they had ridden about a mile, Henry suddenly drew up at the door of a blacksmith's shop, when, taking out with him a pair of handcuffs, he stepped into the shop to have a little alteration in them. Yet you're a little too small for his build, said Healy, showing the feathers and pointing to Tam. Roar. Now, if they ain't Shipley's Tam, he hadn't sold them now, said the smith. Yes, he has, said Healy. Now you don't. Well, really, said the smith. Would you thought it? Well, why? You needn't go fettering him up this year way. He's faithful this. Best critter. Yes, said Healy. But you good feathers are just the critters to want to run off. Then stupid ones. Doesn't care what they go, and shiftless, drunken ones don't care for nothing. They will stick by, and like us not be rather pleased to toddle round. But these year prime feathers, the heads is like they has it, like sin. No way but fatally. Got legs, they will use them, no mistake. Well, said the smith, feeling among his tools. Then plantainous down there, stranger, and just the place and Kentucky niggers want to go to. They just live terrible fast, don't they? Well, yes, terrible fast. The dying apes, what with the climating and one thing and another. They does so as to keep the market up pretty brisk, said Healy. Well, now, a fellow can't help thinking it a mighty pity to have a nice crowd like Feather, as good and as Tom is, go down to be fairly ground up on one of them, a sugar plantation. Well, now a feather can't help thinking it is a mighty pity to have a nice crowd like a feather, as good and as Tom is. Go down to be fairly ground up one of them a sugar plantation. Well, he's got fair chance. I promise to do well by him. I will get him in house servants in some good old family. And then, if he stand the feather and climbing, he will have a blood good as any nigger ought to ask for. He leaves his wife and children up here. Suppose, yes, but he will get another there. Lord, there's a woman enough everywhere, said Healy. Tom was sitting very mournfully on the outside of the shop while the conversation was going on. Suddenly, he heard the quick, short click of the horse hoof behind him, and before he could fairly awake from his surprise, young Master George sprang into the wagon, threw his arm ominously round his neck, and was sobbing and scolding with energy. I declare, it's real man. It's really mean. I don't care what they say, any of them. It's a nasty mean shame. If I was a man, they should not do it. They should not. So, said George with a kind of subdued howl. Oh, Master George, this does me good, said Tim. I couldn't bear to go off without seeing you. It does me real good, you can tell. Here Tom made some movement of his feet, and George's eye fell on his feathers. What a shame, he declared. He exclaimed, lifting his hand. I will knock that old fellow down. I will. No, you won't, Master George. And you must not talk so loud. It won't help me any to anger him. Well, I won't, Lem, for your sake, but only to think of. It's not. It's a shame. They never sent for me. No send me any word. And if it had not been for Tom Lincoln, I should not have heard it. I tell you, I blow them up. Well, all of them at home. That was not right. I feared. I feared, Master George. Can't help it. I say it's a shame. Look here, Uncle Tom, said he, turning his back to the shop, and speaking in a mysterious tone. I've bought you my dollar. Oh, I could not think of taking on it, Master George. Nowhere in the world, said Tom, quite moved. But you should take it, said George. Look here. I told Aunt Chloe I'd do it, and she advised me just to make a hole in it and put a string through, so you could hang it around your neck and keep it out of sight. Else this mean scamp would take it away. I tell you, Tom, I want to blow him up if you do me good. No, don't, Mr. George, for it won't do me any good. Well, I won't for your sake, said George, busily trying his dollar around Tom's neck. But there, now button your coat tight over it and keep it. And remember, every time you see it, then I will come down after you and bring you back. And Chloe and I have been talking about it. I told her not to fear. I will see to it. And I will tease father's life out if we don't do it. Oh, Mr. George, you must not talk so about your father. Lord. Uncle Tom, I don't mean anything bad. And now, Mr. George, said Tom, you must be good boy. Remember how many hearts is sold on you. Always keep close on your mother. Don't be getting into any of them foolish way boys has of getting too big to mind their mothers. Tell you what, Mr. George, the Lord give good many things twice over, but he don't give you a mother but once. You will never see seek another mother. Mr. George, if you live to be 100 years old, so now you hold on to her and grow up and be a comfort to her. That's my own good boy. You will now, won't you? Yes, I will, Uncle Tom, says George seriously. And be careful of your speaking, Mr. George. Young boys, when they comes to your age, is beautiful. Sometimes it's natural they should be, but real gentlemen, such as I hope you will be, never let fall no words they enough respectful to their parents. You ain't offended, Mr. George? No, indeed, Uncle Tom. You always did give me good advice. I was older, you know, said Tom, stroking the boy's fine, curly head with his large, strong hand, but speaking in a voice as tender as a woman's. And I sees all that bounce in you, oh, Mr. George. You has everything. Bearing privileges, reading, writing, and you will grow up to be a great learned good man, and all the people on the place, and your mother and father will be so proud on you. Be a good master like your father, and be a Christian like your mother. Remember your Creator in the days or over your youth, Mr. George. I will be real good, Uncle Tom, I tell you, says George. I'm going to be a first rater, and don't you be discouraged. I will have you back to the place yet. As I told Aunt Chloe this morning, I will build your house all over, and you shall have a room. You will. You shall have a room for a powder with a carpet on it, not a man, or you will have a good time yet. Harry now came to a door with the handcuffs in his hand. Look here, now, mister, says George. with an air of great superiority as he got out. I should let father and mother know how you treat Uncle Tom. You were welcome, said the trader. I should think you ashamed to spend all your life buying men and women and chain them like cattle. I should think you fear me, said George. So long as your grand folks want to buy men and women, I'm as good as them is, said Haley. Hence, any meanness selling on them. Let's buy it. I will never do either when I'm a man, said George. I'm ashamed, this day, that I'm a Kentuckian. I always was proud of it before. And George sat very straight on his horse and looked around with an air, as if he expected the estate would be impressed with his opinion. Well, goodbye, Uncle Tom. Keep a stiff upper lip, said George. Goodbye, Mr. George, said Tom, looking fondly and admiring at him. God Almighty bless you. Kentucky had got many like you, he said, in the fullness of his heart, as the frank, boyish Frank was lost to his feet. Away he went, and Tom looked, till the clatter of his horse here died away. The last sound of sight of his home, but over his heart there seemed to be a warm spot, where those young hands had placed the precious dollar. Tom put up his hand and held it close to his heart. Now, I tell you what, Tom, said he as he came up to the wagon and let Thor in the handcuffs. I mean to stop far with you, as I generally do with my niggers. And I tell you now, to begin with, you treat me fair, and I will treat you fair. I ain't never hard on my niggers. Calculate to do the best for them I can. Now you see, you'd better just settle down comfortable and not be trying to know tricks because niggers treat of all sorts I am up to. And it's no use. If niggers is quiet, don't be trying to get off. They has good times with me. And if they don't, well, it's their fault and not mine. Tom assured Healy that he has no present intention of running off. In fact, their exploitation seems rather superfluous one to a man with a great pair of iron fetters on his feet. But Mr. Haley has got in the habit of commencing his reactions with his dog with a little exhortation of this nature, calculated as he did, to inspire cheerfully and confidence, and prevent the necessity of any unpleasant scenes. And here, for the present, we take our leave of time to pursue the fortune of other characters in our story. In which property gets into an improper state of mind. It was late in a drizzly afternoon that a traveler alighted at the door of a small country hotel in the village of Neane in Kentucky, and in the bar room he found assembled driven to harbor, and the place present the unusual scenery of such reunions. Great chair Robin Kentuckians, attired in hunting shirts and traveling their routes jaunt over a vast extent of territory, with the easy lounge peculiar to the race, rifled staked away in the corner, shell punches, gambits, hunting dog, and little negroes, and all rolled together in a corner, where the characteristic features in the picture. At each end of the fireplace sat in a long-legged gentleman, with his chair tipped back, his hat on his head, and the heels of his muddy boots reposing sublime on the mantelpiece, a position, we will inform our readers, decidedly favorable to the turn of refraction incident to Western travels. Here, traveler exhibit a decided preference for this particular mode of elevating their understandings. My host, who stood behind the bar, like most of his countrymen, was great of stature, good-natured, and loose-jointed, with an enormous shock of hair on his head, and a great tail hat on the top of that. In fact, everybody in the room bore his hat this characteristic emblem of man's sovereignty, whether it were felt hat, palm leaf, greasy beaver, or fine new chamber, then it reposed with true republican independence. In truth, it appeared to be the characteristic mark of every individual. Some wore them tipped regularly to one side. These were your men of humor, jolly, free, and easy dogs. Some had them jammed independently down of their noses. There were your hard characters, thorough men who, when they wear their hats, wanted to wear them, and to wear them just as they had a mind to. There were those who had them set far over the back, while a vacant man who wanted a clear prospect, while careless men who did not know or care how their heads sat, had them shaking about in all directions. Their various hats, in fact, were quite a Shakespearean study. Divers negroes, in very free and easy patterns, and with no redundancy in the shirt line, were scuttling about hither and thither, without bringing to pass any very particular result, except expressing a genetic willingness to turn over everything in creation generally for the benefit of master and his guest, and to the picture of jolly, crackly, roll-licking fire, going rejoicingly up a great wide chimney, the outer door and every window being set wide open, and the calico window curtain flopping and snapping in a good stiff breeze of damp raw air, and you have an idea of the joyousness, jollities of a Kentucky tavern. Your Kentuckian of the present day is a good illustration of the doctrine of transmitted extents and peculiarities. His father were mighty hunters, men who lived in the woods and slept under a free, open heaven, with the stars to behold their candle. And their descendant to this day always acts as if the house were his camp, where his hat at all hours, tumbles himself about, and put his heel on the top of the chair and mantelpieces, just as her father rode on the green sward, and put his upon trees and logs, keeps all the windows and doors open, winter and summer, that he may get air enough for his great lungs, calls everybody stranger, with nomenclature Bonhomie, and is altogether the frankest, easiest, most jovial creature living. Into such an assembly of the free and easy our traveller entered. He was a short, thick-set man, carefully dressed, with a round, good-natured countenance and something rather fussy and particular in his appearance. He was very careful of his valise and umbrella, bringing them in with his own hands, and resisting, potentially, all offer from the various servants to relieve him of them. He looked around the barroom with rather an anxious air, and retreating with his valuables to the warmest corner, depositing them under a chair, sat down, and looked rather apprehensively at the worthy whose ears illustrated at the end of the mantelpiece, who was speeding from right to left, with a courage and energy rather unknown to gentlemen of the weak nerve and particular habits. I say, stranger, how are you? Said the aforesaid gentleman, flying an honorary salute of the tobacco juice in the direction of a new arrival. Well, I reckon, was the reply of the other, as he dodged with some alarm and threatening under. Any news? Sarah responded, taking off a strip of tobacco and a large hunting knife from his pocket. Not that I know of, said the man. Chow, said the first speaker, handing the old gentleman a bit of his tobacco with a decided brother air. No, thank you. It don't agree with me, said the little man, edging off. Don't, yeah? Said the other, easily, and stowing away the morsel in his own mouth, in order to keep up the supply of tobacco juice for the general benefit of society. The old gentleman uniformly gave a little start whenever his long-sighted brother fired his direction, and this being observed by his companion, he very good-natured turned his artillery to another quarter, and proceeded to stun one of the fire-iron with a degree of military talent fully sufficient to take a city. What's that? Said the old gentleman, observing some of the company formed in a group around a large handbill. Nigger advertised, said one of the company briefly. Mr. Wilson, for that was an old gentleman's name, rose up, and after carefully adjusting his valise and umbrella, proceeded deliberately to take off his spectacles and fix them on his nose. And this operation being performed, read as follows: ran away from the subscriber, my little boy, George. Said George 6 feet in his height, a very light mulatto, brown curly hair, is very intelligent, speaks handsomely, can read and write, will probably try to pass for a white man, is deeply scarred on his back and shoulder, has been burnt his right hand with the letter H. I will give $500 for his life, for him alive, and the same sum for the satisfactory proof that he has been killed. The old man read the advertisement from end to end in a low voice, as if he was studying it. The long-legged veteran, who had been besieging the fire-iron, as before related, now took down his cumbrous length, and rearing aloft his tone form, walked up to the advertisement and very deliberately spit a full discharge of tobacco juice on it. "There is my mind upon that," said he, briefly, and sat down again. "Now, why, now, stranger, what's that for?" said my host. "I'd do it all the same to the writer of the air paper, if he was here," said the long man, coolly resuming his old employment of cutting tobacco. "Any man that owns a boy like that, and can't find any better or treating on him, deserves to lose him. Such paper as this is a shame to Kentucky. That's my mind right out. If anybody wants to know, then now, that's a fact," says my host, as he made an entry in his book. "I've got a gang of boys, sir," said the long man, resuming his take on the fire iron. "And I just tell them, 'Boys,' said I, 'run now, dig, put, just when you want to. I never should come to look after you.' That's the way I keep mine. Let them know they're free to run any time, and it just breaks up their wanting to. More and all, I've got free papers for them all recorded, in case I get killed upon killed up any all this time. And they knows it. And I tell you, stranger, there ain't a fellow in our part get more out of his niggers than I do. Why, my boys have been to Cincinnati with $500 worth of a coat and brought me back the money, and all straight time and aging. It stands to reason they should treat them like dogs, and you will have dogs. Words and dog actions. Treat them like men, and you will have men's work." And the honest drover, in his warmth, endorsed these moral sentiments by firing a perfect birthday jar at the fireplace. "I think you altogether right, friends," said Mr. Wilson. "And this boy described, he is a fine fellow, no mistake about that. He worked for me some half-dozen years in my bargain factory, and he was my best hand, sir. He's an ingenious fellow too. He invented a machine for the cleaning of hemp, a really valuable affair. It's come into use in several factories. His master holds the patent of it. I will rent you," said the drover, holds it and makes money out of it, and then turns around and brings the boy in his right hand. "If I had a fair chance, I'd mark him, I reckon, so that he would carry it one while. This you knowing, boys are either aggravating, aggravating, and saucy," said a coarse-looking fellow from the other side of the room. "That's why they gets cut up and marked so. If they behave themselves, they wouldn't. That's to say, the roads men, and it's hard to squeeze getting them down into beasts," said the drover, dryly. "Bright niggers is no kind of mentage to their masters," continued the other, well interested, and of course, as unconsciously obtuse from the contempt of his opponent. "What's the use of talents and learned things, if you can't get the use of them yourself? Why, all the use they make on it is to get around you. I've had one or two of these feathers, and I just saw them downriver. I knew I'd come to lose them, first or last, if I didn't. Better send orders up to the road to make you a set, and leave out their soul entirely. Sarah Drover. Here the conversation was interrupted by the approach of a small one-horse buggy to the inn. He had a genteel appearance, and a well-dressed, gentlemanly sat on the seat, with a coloured servant driving. The whole party examined the newcomer with the interest with which a set of loafers in a rainy days usually examine every newcomer. He was very tall, with a dark Spanish complexion, fine, expressive black eyes, and close curling hair, also a glossy blackness. His well-formed aquiline nose, straight thin lips, and the admirable contour of his fine-formed limbs impressed the whole company instantly with the idea of something uncommon. He walked easily in among the company, and with a nod indicated to his waiter where to place his trunk, bowed to the company, and with his hat in his hand, walked up leisurely to the bar and gave him his name as Henry Butler, Oaklands, Shipley County. Turning with an indifferent air, he sauntered up to the advertisement and read it over. Jim, he said to his man, seemed to me we met a boy something like this. Up and Bonners, didn't we? Yes, master, said Jim, only I ain't sure about this hand. Well, I did not look, of course, said the stranger, with a careless yawn. Then, walking up to the landlord, he desired him to furnish him with a private apartment, as he had some writing to do immediately. The landlord was all obscurus, and a rally of about 7 negroes, old and young, male and female, little and big, were soon whistling about like a covey of partridges, bustling, hurrying, treading on each other's toes, and tumbling over each other in their zeal to get master's room ready, while he sits himself easily on the chair in the middle of the room, and entered into a conversation with the man who sat next to him, the fat nature, Mr. Wilson. From the time to the entrance of the stranger, and regarded him with an air of disturbed and uneasy curiosity. He seemed to himself to have met and been acquainted with him somewhere, but you could not recall it. Every few moments, while the man spoke, or then suddenly withdrew them, as a bright dark eyes met him with an unconcerned coolness, and last, a sudden recollection seemed to flash upon him, for he stared at the stranger with such an eye of blank amazement and alarm that he walked up to him. Mr. Wilson, I think, said he, in a tone of recognition, and extending his hand. I beg your pardon. I didn't recollect you before. I still remember me, Mr. Butler of Oaklands, Shipley County. Yes, sir, said Mr. Wilson, like one speaking in a dream. Just then a negro boy entered and announced that master's room was ready. Jim, see to the trunks, said the gentleman, very gently. Then, addressing himself to Mr. Wilson, he added, I should like to have a few moments' conversation with you on a business in my room, if you please. Mr. Wilson followed him as one who walks in his sleep, and they proceeded to a large upper chamber, where a new-made fire was cracking, and various servants flying about, putting finished touch to the arrangement. When all was done, and the servant departed, the boy's man deliberately locked the door and putting the key in his pocket, faced about, and folding his arm on his bosom, looked Mr. Wilson full in the face. "George," said Mr. Wilson. "Yes, George," says the young man. "I could not have thought of it." "I'm pretty well disguised, I fancy," said the young man, with a smile. "A little walnut bark has made me yellow skin a gentle brown, and I dye my hair black. So you see don't answer to the advertisement at all. Oh, George, but this is the dangerous game you are playing. I could not have advised you to do it. I can do it at my own responsibility," says George, with the same proud smile. We remark in passant that George was, by his father's side, of royal descent. His mother was one of those unfortunates of his race, marked out of personal beauty, to be the slave of the passion of his possessor, and the mother of children who may never know a father. From one of partner's families in Kentucky, he had inherited a set of fine European features and a high, indomitable spirit. From his mother he had received only a diet of mulatto tin, amply compensated by its accompanying rich dark eye, a slight stranger in the tint of skin and the color of his hair, had metamorphosed him into the Spanish-looking feather he then appeared, and a gracefulness of movement and gentlemanly manners had always been perfectly natural to him. He found no difficulty in playing the bold part he has adopted, that of a gentleman travelling with his domestic. Mr. Wilson, a good-natured but extremely fidgety and cautious old gentleman, ambled up and down the room, appeared as John Barnum-headed, much tumbled up and down in his mind, divided between his wish to help George, and certain confused notion of maintaining law and order. So as he shambled about, he delivered himself as follows. "Well, George, I suppose you are running away, leaving your lawful master, George." "I don't wonder at it. At the same time, I'm worried. I'm sorry, George. Yes, decidedly. I think I must say that, George. It's my duty to tell you so." "Why are you sorry, sir?" said George calmly. "Glad to see you. I see well. Setting yourself in opposition to the laws of your country." "My country?" said George, with a strong and bitter emphasis. "What country have I?" "Paragraph. And I wish to God that I was laid there." "Why, George, no, no, it won't do. This way of talking is wicked." "I'm skeptical. George, you have got a hard master. Ugh, you have got a hard master. In fact, he is well. He conducts himself prehensibly. I can't pretend to defend him, but you know how the angel commands Hagar to return her mistress and submit herself under her head, and the absolute sent back once more to his master. Don't quote Bible and me that way, Mr. Wilson, said George, with a flashing eye. Don't, for my wife is a Christian, and I mean to be, if ever I get to where I can. But to quote Bible to a fellow in my circumstances is enough to make him give it up altogether. I appeal to God Almighty. I am willing to go with the case to him, and ask him, if I do run to seek my freedom. This feeling are quite natural, George, said the good-natured man, blowing his nose. Yes, they are nature. But it is my duty not to encourage them in you. Yes, my boy, I'm sorry for you. Now, it's a bad case. Very bad. But a possible way. Let everyone abide in the condition in which he is told. We must all submit to the invitation of Providence. George, don't you see? George stood with his head drawn back, his arm folded tightly over his broad breast, and a bitter smile curling his lips. I wonder, Mr. Wilson, if the Indians should come and take you a prisoner away from your wife and children, and want to keep you all your life hoeing corn for them, if you think your duty to abide in condition in which you were called, I rather think that you think the first stray horse you could find an indication of Providence, shouldn't you? The little old man stared with a both eye at this illustration of the case, but, though not much to a reasoner, he had the sense of in which some logician on this particular subject do not excel, that of saying nothing, where nothing could be said. So, as he stood carefully stroking his umbrella, and folding and patting down all the creases in it, he paused on his exhortation in a general way. You see, George, you know, now I always have stood your friend, and whatever I say for your good. Now, here, it seems to me you have running an awful risk. You can hope to carry it out. If you were taken, it would be worse with you than ever. They will only abuse you, and have killed you, and sail you down river. Mr. Wilson, I know all this, said George. I do run a risk, but he threw open his overcoat and showed 2 pistols and a bowie knife. There, he said, I am ready for them. Down south, I never will go. No, if it comes to that, I can earn myself at least 6 feet of free soul, the first and last I shall ever own in Kentucky. Why, George, this state of mind is awful. It's getting really desperate, George. I'm concerned. Going to break the laws of your country. My country again. Mr. Wilson, you have a country. But what country have I? Or anyone like me, born a slave mother's? What laws are there for us? We don't make them. All they do for me is to crush us and keep us down. Haven't I heard your 4th of July speeches? Don't you tell us all once a year that governments derive their just power from the consent of the government? Can a fellow think that hears such things? Can he put this and that together and see what it comes to? Mr. Wilson's mind was one of those that may not adeptly be represented by a ball of cotton, downy, soft, benevolently fuzzy, and confused. He really pitied George with all his heart, and had a sort of dim and cloudy perception of the style of feeling that agitated him. But he deemed it his duty to go on talking good to him with infinite pugnacity. George, this is bad. I must tell you, as a friend, you had better not to meddle with such notion. They are bad, George, very bad for boys in your condition, very. And Mr. Wilson sat down to a table and began nervously chewing the candle of his umbrella. See here, now, Mr. Wilson, says George, coming up and sitting himself determined down in front of him. Look at me, now. Don't I see before you? Everywhere, just as much as as you are. Look at my face. Look at my hands. Look at my body. And the young man drawing him up proudly. Why, am I not a man? As much as anybody. Well, Mr. Wilson, Hear what I can tell you. I had a father, one of your Kentucky gentlemen, who didn't think enough of me to keep me from being sold with his dogs and horses to satisfy the estate. When he died, I saw my mother put up a sheriff's self with her 7 children. They were sold before her eyes, one by one, all to different masters, and I was the youngest. She came and knelt down before old master and begged him to buy her with me, that she might have at least one child with her, and he kicked her away with a heavy boot. I saw him do it, and the last I heard was her moans and screams when I was tied to his horse's neck to carry off the place. Well, then, my master trained with one of the men and bought my older sister. She was a precious good girl, a member of the Baptist church, and as handsome as my poor mother has been. She was well brought up and had good manners. At first, I was glad he was bought, but I had one friend near me. I was soon sorry for it, sir. I've stood at the door and heard her weep, when it seems as every blow cut into my naked heart. I could not do anything to help her. And when she was whipped, sir, for wanting to live a decent Christian life, such as your laws give no slave girl to a right to live. And at last I saw her chained with a trader gang to be sent to a market to market in Oregon, sent there for nothing else but that, and that the last I know of her, where I grew up. Long years and years, no father, no mother, no sister, no living soul that cared for me more than a dog. Nothing but weeping, scolding, starving. Why, sir, I've been so hungry that I have been glad to take the bones and throw to their dogs. And yet, when I was a little fellow, and laid it awake whole nights and cried, and wasn't not the hungry, it wasn't the weeping I cried for. No, sir, it was for my mother and my sister. It was because I hadn't a friend to love me on earth. I never knew what peace or comfort was. I never had a kind word spoken to me till I came to work in your factory, Mr. Wilson. You treated me well. You encouraged me to do well, and to learn to read and write, and to try to make something of myself. And God knows how grateful I am for. Then, sir, I found my wife. You have seen her. You know how beautiful she is. When I found she loved me, when I married her, I scarce could believe I was alive. I was so happy, and sure, she was as good as she is beautiful. But now what? Why, now comes my master, take me right away from my work and my friends and all I like, and grounds me down into a very dirt. And why? Because he says I forget who I was. He says to teach me that I'm only a nigger after all, and last of all, to teach me I'm only after all, and at last of all, he comes between me and my wife, and says I shall give her up and live with another man, and all this your laws give him power to do. In spite of God's or man, Mr. Wilson, look at it. It isn't one of these things that have broken the hearts of my mother and my sister and my wife and myself, but your laws allow and give every man power to do in Kentucky, and none can say to him a nay. Do you call these the laws of my country? So I haven't any country any more than I have my father, but I'm going to have one. I don't want anything of your country except to be let alone, to go peaceably out of it. And when I get to Canada, where the laws will own me and protect me. That should be my country, and its laws I will obey. But if any man tries to stop me, let him take care, for I am desperate. I will fight for my liberty till the last breath I breathe. You says your father did it. If it was right for them, it is right for me. This speech, delivered partly while sitting at a table, and partly walking up and down the room, delivered with tears and flashing eyes and despairing gestures, was altogether too much for the good-natured old body to whom it was addressed, who has pulled out a great yellow silk handkerchief and was mopping up his face with great energy. Glass and all, he suddenly brought out, "Haven't I always said so? The infernal old cussies! I hope I ain't swearing. Now, well, go ahead, George, go ahead, but be careful, my boy. Don't shoot anybody, George, unless, well, you had better not shoot, I reckon, at least, I wouldn't hit at anybody. You know, where is your wife, George?" he added, as he rose and began walking the room. "Gone, sir, gone, with her child in his arms. The Lord only knows where. Gone after the North Star. And when we ever meet, or whether we met at all in the world, no creature can tell. Is it possible? Astonished, for such a kind family get in debt, and the laws of our country allow them to sell the child out of its mother's bosom to pay its master's debts," said George bitterly. Well, said an honest old man, fumbling in his pocket. "I suppose, perhaps, I am following my judgment. Hang it, I won't follow my judgment," he added suddenly. "So here, George," and taking out a roll of bills from his pocket-book, he offered them to George. "Now, my kind, good sir," said George, "you have done a great deal for me, and this might get you into trouble. I have money enough, I hope, to take me as far as I need it. No, but you must, George. Money is a great help everywhere. Can't have too much if you get it honestly. Take it now, do, my boy, on condition, sir, that I repay it at some future time. I will," said George, taking up the money. "And now, George, how long are you going to travel in this way?" "Not long or far, I hope. It will carry on, but too bold. And this Blake fellow, who is he?" "A true fellow who went to Canada more than 1 year ago. He heard, after he got there, that his master was so angry at him for going off that he whipped his poor old mother. And he has come all the way back to comfort her, to get a chance to get her away. Has he got her? Not yet. He has been hanging about the place, and found no chance yet. Meanwhile, he's going with me as far as Ohio, to put me among friends that have him. And then he will come back after her. Dangerous, very dangerous," said the old man. George drew him up and smiled disdainfully. The old man eyed him from head to foot with a sort of innocent wonder. "George, something has brought you out wonderfully. You hold up your head, and speak and move like another man," said Mr. Wilson. "Because I am a free man," said George proudly. "Yes, sir, I have said, master, for the last time to any man, I am free. Take care, you are not sure. You may be taken. All men are free and equal in the grave." "If it comes to that, Mr. Wilson," says George, "I am perfectly dumbfounded with your boldness," said Mr. Wilson. "To come right here, to the nearest tavern. They will never think of it. They will look for me on a hat, and you yourself won't know me. Jim's master don't live in the country. He isn't known in these parts. said he is given up. Nobody is looking after him, and nobody will take me up from the advertisement, I think. But the mark in your hands, George drew off his glove and showed a newly healed scar in his hand. That is partly proof of Mr. Harry's regard, he said scornfully. A fortnight ago, he took it into his head to give it to me because he said he believed me I should try to get away one of these things. Looks interesting, doesn't it? He said, throwing his glove on again. I could declare my very blood runs cold when I think of it. Your condition and your rescues, says Mr. Wilson. Mine has run cold in many years, Mr. Wilson, and at present it's about up to the blowing point, said George. Well, my good sir, continued George, after a few moments' silence, I saw you knew me. I thought I'd just have this talk with you. This your surprised looks you should bring me out. I leave early tomorrow morning, before daylight. By tomorrow night, I hope to sleep safe in Ohio. I shall travel by daylight, stop at the best hotel, go to the dinner tables with the loads of the lanes. So, goodbye, sir. If you hear that I am taken, you may know that I am dead. George stood up like a rock, and put out his hand with the air of a prince. The friendly little old man shook it heartily. And after a little shower of cautions, he took his umbrella and fumbled his way out of the room. George stood thoughtfully looking at the door. As the old man closed it, a thought seemed to flash across his mind. He hastily stepped to it and opened it, said, Mr. Wilson, one word more. The old gentleman entered again, and George, as before, locked the door and then stood for a few moments looking on the floor, irresolutely. At last, raising his head with a sudden effort, Mr. Wilson, you have shown yourself a Christian in your treatment of mine. I want to ask one last deed of Christian kindness of you. Well, George, well, sir, what you said was true. I am running a dreadful risk. There is not on earth a living soul to care if I die, he added, drawing his breath hard and speaking with a great effort. I should be kicked out and buried like a dog, and nobody will think of it a day after. Only my poor wife. Poor soul, he will mourn and grieve. And if you'd only contrive, Mr. Wilson, to send this little pin to her, he gave it to me for a Christian present. Poor child, give it to her and tell her I loved her till the last. Will you? Give it to her and tell her I love her to the last. Will you? Will you? He added earnestly. Yes, certainly, poor fellow, said the old gentleman, taking the pin with watery eyes and a melancholy quiver in his voice. Tell her one thing, said George. It's my last wish, if she can get to the Canada, to go there, no matter how kind her mistress is, no matter how much he loves her home. Beg her not to work, beg her not to go back, for slavery always ends in misery. Tell her to bring up our boy a free man, and then he won't suffer as I have. Tell her this, Mr. Wilson, will you? Yes, George, I will tell her, but I trust you won't die. Take heart. You are a brave fellow. Trust in Lord, George. I wish in my heart you were safe through. So that is what I did. Is there a God to trust in? Said George. in such a tone of utter despair arrested the old man's word. Oh, I have seen things all my life that have made me feel that there can be a God. You Christians don't know how this thing looks to us. There is a God for you, but is there any for us? Oh no, don't, my boy, said the old man, almost sobbing as he spoke. Don't feel so. There is. Clouds and darkness are around about him, but rightness and judgment are the habitation of his throne. There is a God, George. Believe it, trust in him, and I'm sure he will help you. Everything will be set right, if not in this life, in another. In another. The real pity and benevolence of the simple old man invested him with a temporary dignity and authority. As he spoke, George stopped his distracted walk up and down the room, stood thoughtfully a moment, and then said quietly, "Thank you for saying that, my good friend. I will think of that." Select incident of a lawful trade. In wrath there was a voice heard, weeping and lamentation and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted. Mr. Haley and Tom jogged onward in their wagon, each for a time absorbed in his own reflections. Now the reflection of two men sitting side by side are curious things, seated on the same seat, having the same eyes, ears, hands, and organs of all sorts, and having passed before their eyes the same objects. It is wonderful what a variety we shall found in these same reflections, as, for example, Mr. Haley, he thought first of Tom's length and breadth and height, and what he would sell for. If he was kept fat in good case till he got him into market, he thought of how he should make out his gain. He thought of the respective market value of certain suspicious men and women and children who were to compose it, and other country topic of the business. Then he thought of himself and how human he was. Now, whereas other men chained their niggers, hand and foot both, he only put feathers on their feet and left Tom the use of his hands alone as he behaved well. And he sighed to think how ungrateful human nature was, so that there was even room to doubt whether Tom appreciated his mercies. He had been taken in so by niggers whom he had favored, but still he was astonished to consider how good natured he yet remained. As to Tom, he was thinking over some words of an unfashionable old book which kept running through his head again and again, and follows. We have here no continuing city, but we seek one to come. Wherefore God himself is not ashamed to be called our God, for he hath prepared for us a city. These words of an ancient volume got up principally by ignorant and unlearned men, have through all time kept up somehow a strange sort of power over the minds of poor simple fellows like Tom. They stir up the soul from its depths and rouse us with triumphant courage, energy, and enthusiasm, where before was the only blackness of despair. Mr. Haley pulled out his pocket sundry newspapers and began looking over their advertisements with absorbed interest. He was not a remarkable fluent reader, and was in the habit of reading in a sort of recitative half aloud, by way of calling his ears to verify the deduction of his eyes. In this tone, he slowly recites the following paragraph. Executor sells Negroes agreeable to order of count of Kurt will be sold on Tuesday, February 20, before the Kurt house door in the town of Washington, Kentucky. The following Negroes: Hager, age 60, John, age 30, Ben, age 21, Sal, age 25, Albert, age 40, sold for the benefit of the creditors and the heirs of the estate of J.C. Blatchford, Esq. Samuel Morris, Thomas Flint, executed. This year I must look at, said he into town, for want of somebody else to talk to. Yes, I'm going to get up a prime game to take down with you, Tom. It will make a sociable and pleasant like. Good company well, you know. We must drive right to Washington first and foremost, and then I will clap you into jail. Well, I does the business. Tom received the agreeable intelligence quite meekly, simply wondering in his own heart, how many of these two men have wives and children, and whether they would feel as he did about leaving them. It's to be confessed, too, whether naive or faint information that he was to be thrown into jail by no means produced an agreeable impressions on a poor fellow who had always prided himself on a strictly honest and upright course of life. Yes, Tom, we must confess it, was rather proud of his honest, poor fellow, not having very much else to prate of. If he had belonged to some of the higher works of society, he, perhaps, would never have been reduced to such straits. However, the days wore on, and he even so highly in town comfortably accommodated in Washington, the one in tavern and the other in jail. About 11 o'clock the next day, a Miss Thorne was gathered around the courthouse steps, smoking, chewing, spitting, swearing, and conversing, according to their respective tastes and turns, waiting for the auction to commence. The man and woman to be sold sat in a group apart, talking in a low tone to each other. The woman, who had been advertised by the name of Hager, was a regular African in feature of figure. He might have been 60, but was older than by hard work and disease. Was partially blind and somewhat crippled with rehabilitation. By her side stood her only remaining son, Albert, a bright-looking little fellow of 14 years. The boy was the only survivor of the large family, who had been successfully sold away from her to a southern market. The mother held on to him with both her shaking hands, and eyed with intense trepidation with every one who walked up to examine him. Don't be feared, Aunt Hager, said the oldest of the men. I spoke to Mr. Thomas about it, and he thought he might manage to sell you in a lot both together. They're needed to call me well out yet, said she, lifting shaking head. I can't cook yet, and scalp are worth a buying if I give some cheap. Tell him there. You tell him, she added earnestly. Haley here forced his way into the group, walked up to the old man, pulled his mouth open and looked in, felt his teeth, made him stand and straighten himself, bent his back, and performed various evolutions to show his muscles, and then passes on to the next, and put him through the same trial. Walking up next to the boy, he felt of his arm, straightened his arm, and looked at his fingers and made him jump to show his agility. he ain't going to be sold without me, said the old woman, without passionate eagerness. He and I goes in a lot together. I'm well strong yet, master, and can I do heaps of works? Heaps I made, master. Plantation, said Haley with a competition glance, likely story, and as if satisfied with his examination, he walked out and looked, and stood with his hand in his pocket, his cigarette in his mouth, and his head cocked on one side, ready for action. What think of them? Said a man who had been following Haley's explanation as if make up his own mind on it. Well, said Haley, spitting, I should put it. I think for the youngly ones and the boy. They want to sell the boy and the old woman together, said the man. Found it tight, poor. Why? She's an old rag of bones, not worth her salt. You wouldn't then, said the man. Anybody be a fool. She's half blind, cloaked with a rheumatism, and foolish to boot. Some buys up this year old quittles, and sees there's a sight more wear in them than a body thing, said the man reflectively. Now go. It's all, said Haley. Wouldn't take her for a present. I've seen. Now, well, it's come to pity. Now, not to buy her with her son. Her heart seems soft on him. Suppose they flying her in cheap. Then let's got money to spend that away. It's all well enough. I should bid on the air boy for plantation hands. Wouldn't be bothered with her, no way. Not if they have give her to me, said he. She will take said the man. Naturally she will, said the preacher coolly. The conversation was here interrupted by a busy hymn in the audience, and the auctioneer, a short, bustling, important fellow, ambled his way into the crowd. The old woman drew his breath and called instantly at his son. Keep close to your mom, Albert. Close. Don't well put us up together, she said. Oh, mommy, I am feared they won't, said the boy. They must, child. I can live no ways if they don't, said the old creature vehemently. The centering tones of the auctioneer calling out to clear the way now announced that the sale was about to commence. The place was cleared, and the bidding began. The different men on the list would soon knock off the price, which showed a pretty brisk demand in the market. Two of them fell to Haley. Come now, young man, said the auctioneer, giving the boy a touch with his hammer. Be up and show your springs now. Put us two up together. Do please, master, said the old man, holding fast to the boy. Be off, said the man, wrongfully, pushing her hands away. You come last. Now, Ducky spring, and with a word, he pushed the boy to the block. With a deep, heavy ground rose behind him. The boy paused and looked back. But there was no time to stay. In dashing the tears from his large, bright eyes, he was up in a moment. His fine figure, alert limbs, and bright face raised an instant competition, and half a dozen breeds simultaneously met the ear of the auctioneer. Anxious, half frightened, he looked from side to side as he heard the clatter of contending bids, now here, now there, till the hammer fell. Harry had got him. He was pushed from the block to his new master, but stopped one moment and looked back, when his poor old mother, trembling in every limb, held out his shaking hands to him. Buy me too, master, for dear Rose's sake. Buy me. I shall die if you don't. You will die if I do. That's the thing. That's the king of it, said Haley. Now he turned on his heel. The bidding for the poor old creature was summary. The man who had addressed Haley, and who seemed not tilted of compassion bore her for a trifle, and the spectators began to disperse. The poor victims of the sale, who had been brought up in one place together for years, gathered round the despairing old mother, whose agony was pitiful to see. "Couldn't you leave me one? Master Alert said I should have one. He did," she repeated over and over, in heartbroken tones. "Trust in the Lord, and Hagar," said the oldest of the men sorrowfully. "What good will it do?" said she, sobbing passionately. "Mother, mother, don't, said the boy. "They say you got a good master. I don't care, Oh, Albert, oh, my boy, use my last baby. No, use my last baby. No, now can I?" "Come, take her off, can some of you?" said Harry dryly. "Don't do no good for her to go and lay away." The old man of the company, partly by persuasion and partly by force, loosed the poor creature less desperately hurt, and as they led her off to her new master's wagon, strove to comfort her. "Now," said Harry, pushing his three purchased together, and producing a bundle of handcuffs, which he used to put on her waist, and fasten each handcuff to a long chain. He drove them before he to the jail. A few days saw Hill, with a position, safely deposited on one of the Ohio boats. It was commencement of his game, to be augmented on the boats for bound by various other merchandise of the same kind, which he of his agents have stored for him in various points along shore. The La Belle River, as brave and beautiful a boat as ever walked on the water of her namesake river, was floating gaily down the stream under brilliant sky. The strips and stars of free America waving and fluttering overhead. The guides crowded with well-dressed ladies and gentlemen walking and enjoying a delightful day. All was full of life, buoyant, and rejoicing. All but Harry Scan, who was stored with other fright on the lower deck, and who somehow did not seem to appreciate their various privileges, as they sat in a knot talking to each other in low tone. "Boy," said Harry, "come up," briskly. "I hope you keep up good hearts, and are cheerful. Now, no sulk, you see. Please dip upper lip. Boys, do well by me, and I will do well by you." The boy's address responded, the invariable "Yes, master," for each the watchword of poor Africa. But it's to be owned they did not look particularly cheerful. They had their various little prejudices in favor of wives, mother, sister, and children, seeing for less time, and thought that wasted them required for them mirth. It was not instantly forthcoming. "I've got a wife," spoke out the article in immoderate as John, aged 30, and he laid her hand on Tom's knee. "And she don't know a word about this, poor girl. Where does she live?" said Tom. "In a tavern of peace down here," said John. "I wish, now, I could see her once more in the world," he added. Poor John! It was rather natural, and the tears that fell as he spoke came as naturally as if he had been a white man. Tom drew a long breath from a sore heart, and tried, in his poor way, to comfort him. And overhead, in the cabin, sat father and mother, husband and wives, and merry and dancing children moved around among them, like so many little butterflies. And Everything was going on quite easy and comfortable. Oh, Mama, said the boy, who had just come up from below. There's a Negro trader on the board, and he's bought 4 or 5 slaves down there. Poor creatures, said the mother, in a tone between grief and indignation. What's that? Said another lady. Some poor slaves below, said the mother, and they have got chains on, said the boy. What a shame to our country that such sights are to be seen, said another lady. Oh, there's a great deal to be said on both sides of the subject, said the gentlewoman, who sat at her stateroom door sewing, while her little girl and boy were playing around her. I've been south, and I must say I think these Negroes are better off than they would be to be free. In some respects, some of them are well off, I grant, said the lady to whose remark she has answered. The most dreadful part of slavery, to my mind, is its outrage on the feeling and affections, the separating of families. For example, that is a bad thing, certainly, said the other lady, holding out a baby's dress she had just completed, and looking intently on it dreamily. But then I fancy it don't occur often. Oh, it does, said the first lady, eagerly. I've lived many years in Kentucky and Virginia both. I have seen enough to make any one's heart sick. Suppose, ma'am, your 2 children later should be taken from you and sold. We can reason from our feeling to loss of this class of persons, said the other lady, sorting out some worsted on her lap. Indeed, ma'am. You can know nothing of them. If you say so, answered the first lady warmly, and was born and brought up among them. I know they do feel just like Kimberly, even more so, perhaps, as we do. The lady said indeed, yawned, and looked out the cabin window, and finally repeated, for final, the remark with which he had begun. After all, I think they were better off than they would be to be free. It's undoubtedly the intention of Providence that the African race should be servants, kept in a low condition, said a grave-looking gentleman in black, a clergyman, seated by the cabin door, Crosby Cannon, a servant of servants. Should he be, the scripture says. I say, stranger, is that yet what the text means? Said a tall man standing by. Undoubtedly. It pleased Providence, for some inscrutable reason, to doom the race to bondage age ago, and we must not set out our opinion against that. Well, then, we will all go ahead and buy up niggers, said the man. If that's the way of Providence, when we, Squire, said he, turning to Haley, who has been standing with his hand in his pocket by the stove, and intently listening to the conversation. Yes, continued the tall man, we must all be resigned to the decrees of Providence. Negroes must be sold and tucked round and kept under. It's what they're made for. Feels like this your view quite refreshing, and it, stranger, said he to Haley. I never thought on it, said Haley. I couldn't have said as much myself. I hadn't not learning. I took up the trade just to make a living. If and right, I calculate to pence and it in time, you know. And now you'll save yourself in the trouble, won't you? Said the tall man. See what it is now to know scripture. If you only study your Bible, like this here good man, you might have known it before, and saved you a heap of trouble. You could just have said, Cosby, what's his name? And you all have some right. And the stranger who has no other and the honest drover who we introduced to our readers in Kentucky Tavern, sat down and began smoking with a curious smile on his long dry face. A tall, slender young man with a face impressive of a great words, all things whatsoever you would that man should do unto you. Do you even so unto them? I suppose, he added. That is subject. As much as could be canon. Well, it seems quite as plain as text, stranger, said John the drover. To poor fellow like us now, and John smoked on like a volcano. The young man paused, looked as he was going to say more, when suddenly the boat stopped. The company made the usual steamboat rush to see where they were landing. Both men are chaps' persons, said John to one of the men, as they are going out. The man nodded, as the boat stopped. A black man came running wildly up the plank, darted into the crowd, flew up where the slave gang sat, and threw her arms around the unfortunate piece of merchandise before immolated John, aged 30, and with sobs and tears bemoaned him as her husband. But one needs tell the story, told too often, every day told of heartstring rent and broken, the weak broken and torn for the profit and convenience of the strong. It need not to be told. Every day is telling it too, in the ears of one who is not deaf, though he be long silent. The young man who had spoken for the cause of humanity, and God before stood with folded arm, looking on this scene. He turned, and Harry was standing at his side. My friend, he said, speaking with thick utterance, how dare you, carrying a tray like this? Look at those poor creatures. Here I am, rejoicing in my heart that I am going home to my wife and child, and the same bell which is a signal to carry me onward toward them will part this poor man and his wife forever. Depend upon it. God will bring you into judgment for this. The trader turned away in silence. I say, now, said the drover, touching his elbow. There is difference in persons, and there. Causes the canon don't seem to go down with it, and doesn't. Helen gave an uneasy groan. And that's and the words on it, said John. Maybe it will go down with the Lord, neither. When you come to settle with him, one of these days, as old and as must, I reckon. Harry walked reflectively to the other end of the boat. If I make pretty handsomely on one or two next games, he thought, I reckon I will stop off the years. It's really getting dangerous, and he took out his pocketbook and began adding over his accounts, a process which many gentlemen besides Mr. Harry has found a specific for uneasy conscience. The boat swept proudly away from the shore, and all went on merrily. And as before, men talked and laughed and read and smoked. Women sold and children played, and the boat passed on her way. One day, when she lay to a while at a small town in Kentucky, Harry went up into a place on a little matter of business. Tom, whose fetters did not prevent his taking a moderate circuit, had drawn near the side of the boat, and stood listlessly gazing over the railing. After a time, he saw the trader returning, with the steps, in company with a colored woman, bearing his arm a child. She was dressed quite respectably, and a colored man followed her, bringing along a small trunk. The woman came cheerfully onward, talking as she came. the man who bore her trunk, and so passed up the plank into the boat. The bell rang, the steamer whistled, and the engine ground and caught, and away swept the boat down the river. The woman walked forward among the boxes and bales of the lower deck, and sitting down, busied herself with a shrubbeting to her baby. Harry made a turn or two about the boat, and then, coming up, seating himself near her, and began saying something to her in a different undertone. Tom soon noticed a heavy cloud passing over the woman's brow, and then she answered rapidly and with a great vehemence.